Put down the crack pipe, kids. It's time for .NET Rocks. The Internet Audio Talk Show for .NET developers. I'm your host in London, Connecticut, Visceral Fats. And my host in, where the hell are you? Montgomery, Alabama?
I'm in Montgomery, man. This is Saturated Fats.
Saturated Fats.
What's going on?
We're all just getting over colds here, and I'm sort of in the throes of one. How you doing, Mark?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, it's good to hear from you. Yeah, I picked up this cold somewhere. Doctor said it was something called SARS, but it's nothing to worry about. But
been eating Chinese food lately,
I guess, yeah. And well, you know, it should blow over pretty soon, but you just have to put up with my blues singer sound. And now I'm joining the group here. We're gonna have our guest Michael come on as polyunsaturated fats. So it'll be a whole band of blues singers before the night is out. Hey, Mark, you notice anything going on in .NET land this week?
Well, I know the new version of .NET's been released, so you can, of course, download that from MSDN Library.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're an MSDN subscriber, that is. And everybody should be that's a developer, right?
And one other thing we were talking about right before we started recording was that there's a coupon in the box for an upgrade from Enterprise Edition for only, what, $27?
Yeah, I think that's right. I've got a coupon in my Enterprise Architect Edition that lets you upgrade for $27.
That's incredible.
What a deal.
Yeah, such a deal indeed. Well, I went looking on the website, Microsoft.com/PressPass, and I'll add a link to this on the website. I like to go here to find out, you know, what the rest of the world is getting in terms of news from Microsoft about .NET and things and their products. And there's some good stuff up here. They talk about their new brand, Windows Server System, you know, and for developers, you know, hey, we have a love-hate relationship with our marketing department, but it's good to know what they're telling the world this stuff is. So the Windows Server System, I suppose, is the new server brand. And there's some great stuff here that was done in just the last couple of weeks. There's another one that's a Q&A session on secure computing, which is sort of a interview with Mike Nash, who's the corporate vice president of Microsoft's Security Business Unit. And he's talking about some of the new innovations in security that they've come up with in the last year and what it's like to be on the customer side of security issues and what are some of the big issues, what are the things that they're doing. As you know, security is a big deal for Microsoft, and they're trying to do a good job of getting stuff going. So there's some great articles up here. It's good to read, even if you want to step back from your developer role for a little bit and take a look and see what's going on.
Yeah, security is probably going to be a pretty big practice in the consulting arena in the future. Don't you think? I mean, security is something that developers kind of shy away from at times. But,
oh, absolutely.
You know, definitely something that you're going to have to address and deal with .NET.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much security in the .NET framework that, you know, it can be quite easy to, you know, it's sort of like a big monster like NT security is. I don't know if you ever knew anybody who, when they just started trying to mess around with groups and stuff and permissions, completely locked themselves out of their own computer. You ever see that happen?
Yeah, I've known a network administrator that did that once.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the same thing could happen if you're not careful, because we have so much security, we could completely lock everything down so that we're getting errors all the time. So it's a good thing to know.
Right. You know, I just taught a class last week, and this popped up because one of the students had written a console app, and he decided to run it over the network. He got a security violation when that happened.
Yeah.
So it was a great, what would you call it with kids, almost a teachable moment, to be able to go in and show them how to configure it to be trusted.
Right. Now, what did we learn from this little exercise, kids? Well, and we're going to have a show here coming up on some stories. You've got lots of great stories in your back pocket that I can't wait to hear. But one of them about training, one of them was great that you You went to teach a class, and the second day, nothing worked, right?
Right.
In the class. Like, nobody could get into their machines. Nobody could write code. You were getting security errors all over the place. Tell me that story.
Right. I think you're referring to a class that I taught up in Atlanta. And there was a night class going on. So the next day when we came in, the guy that was teaching the night class had completely repaved the machines.
And it was a class in security, right?
It's a security class, and he had done that because he had gotten himself into a situation where none of them could get back into the network. And, it got worse. He did it like 2 or 3 other times during the week.
And the thing that really killed me was when you went to go ask the people who were in charge of the room, hey, what's happening here? Like, they didn't have any clue.
No, they had no earthly idea what was going on.
So, and some people dropped out of the class or something?
No, they actually, a couple of them wanted their money back, which
that's what it was.
Is never a good thing when that happens.
Yeah, not good. Another couple of things I'll mention is that we're the sunny day video that we talked about on objects is still in production, and it will be available soon. We're getting a newsletter, ramping up to get a new newsletter going on here, and we are the featured site. .NET Rocks is the featured site on got.net.com for the month of April. And I thought that was nice to mention. Thank you very much for that, got.net. Got.net.com is sort of a C# centric, but it has some VB samples, but it's a nice portal it's Microsoft's run portal for .NET programmers. And there's a lot of stuff there. There's a lot of great downloadable samples, incredible samples, actually, and a good community as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how got.net has grown. I remember when I first found the site, I was out at Microsoft doing some work and became aware of it. And it was really pretty small back then. And now it's a huge site.
Right. Yeah. So, Mark, have you done any work with the Microsoft application blocks, or the bluebricks as they're called?
I looked at one of them. I think it's a data template to do a data access object.
Uh-huh.
But that's about all I've looked into the bluebricks. Yeah,
I saw them demonstrated at the Hartford .NET user group meeting last month, and I particularly saw the database one that had caught my eye. So there's been a lot of buzz about these application blocks, which are pre-written code that you can download from Microsoft to do some of the things that you do all the time. And it sort of shows a best practice and gives you some real code, and it's commented. And so, there's been a buzz about it, and we asked our Microsoft contacts if we could find somebody to come on the show and explain it to us and talk about what's coming up. So our guest today is Michael Stuart, a senior consultant in Microsoft Consulting Services who just happens to be working on the Bluebricks project. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you.
Hey, Michael, good to have you with us.
Thank you.
So you are in Redmond?
I actually live in Houston. I work out of here most of the time, but for this Bluebricks project for the past 6 months and probably for the next 2 or so, I'll be working with the guys in Redmond directly. I go up there about every 3 weeks or so.
Okay. So you've been working with Microsoft for about 3 years, and you're a .NET specialist.
That's right.
Yep. And
although saying a specialist at Microsoft is kind of a dangerous thing to say.
Why is that?
I try not to say I'm expert in anything.
Because then they'll task you with things, or?
Because I'll guarantee that there's somebody who's about 5 times smarter than you in any given field.
That's true. That's true. And that's a way of life, right? One-upping each other at Microsoft about stuff like that.
It happens.
Yeah. So you currently are working on 3 new Bluebricks projects, right?
Right.
So why don't you tell us about those?
They're amazingly exciting. I mean, I was glad that you talked about the data access brick, because I think that if anybody's heard of Bluebricks, they've probably heard of the data access brick. It's a data access was done. I think it was probably it was the first Bluebrick that was written. It was done about 1.5 years ago, and a lot of collaboration with the guys from Vertigo Software. If y'all recall, do you remember the FM stocks demonstration application?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, Fitch and Other Stocks.
Oh, killer. I mean,
yeah.
Sure.
I learned everything I needed to know about MTS from that application.
Yeah.
And that was just a springboard. And then, of course, Patterson's book and all that.
We've actually had Scott on the show and talked quite a bit about FM stocks and the pet shop and all the stuff that they do for you. So
cool, good, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're also talking to them about using the UIP in the next version of Pet Shop.
Great.
We got a lot. I wouldn't say a lot. We got a fair amount of criticism from the Java community that Pet Shop wasn't necessarily a reference architecture.
Right. And
they had a point. We wrote one that was a very thin layer that didn't have a whole lot of ivory tower purity in it. I'm okay with that.
Sure.
I'm very pragmatic, but I can see what they were saying. So I'm glad that we're focusing on a very pure OO orientation for the next one.
Yeah, Vertigo puts out some great stuff. I've enjoyed everything I've seen of theirs.
Yeah, they're really impressive.
Yeah, one thing that impressed me when we talked to Scott, being the CEO or president of Vertigo, he was incredibly technical.
Yeah,
and you just don't run into that much with companies,
Sure, I mean the guy's got his hands in the metal all the time. So anyway, but let's talk about the bluebricks.
Yeah, let's back up and talk about the database bluebrick.
Well,
actually.
So the database bluebrick came out about a year and a half ago, and it was in beta right about the time. I think right. No, that's about right. Yeah, right about the time Visual Studio was releasing. And the idea behind it was, I love all the new stuff in ADO.NET, but a lot of people became real used to the way a record set kind of wrapped up everything for you. And so a bunch of guys said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we wrote a real thin, practical data access layer on top of ADO.NET that hides some of the complexity from you and just works.
Right.
And from that idea came the bluebricks. And the team that makes bluebricks is called Patterns and Practices.
Right.
They're not a huge group in the content and delivery group, and I guess they just got a crazy idea and cranked the thing out. That group does a whole lot more than just bluebricks. They also are responsible for writing a lot of content about reference architectures. If you go to the site, and here's the URL, msdn.microsoft.com/practices, you'll see that there are a ton of white papers on there, and they're just those papers that you always wished you could have found on MSDN.
Right.
A roll-up. Here's how to do a secure web application in .NET, and it leaves nothing to the imagination. I mean, it is explicit.
Great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, anytime you can wrap a design pattern up and make it easy for a developer to follow it, I think that's a win-win combination.
Absolutely. Yeah, developers learn a lot by looking at other code.
Oh, for sure. And, we all pay lip service to patterns, but unless we get used to using them and get them put in front of us, sometimes it's easy to revert back to old bad habits.
Right.
I love patterns. I mean, I'm sort of certainly compared to some of the guys up in Redmond, I'm a novice with patterns, but, for the last year, I've just been saturated with them, and I love that concept. One of the bluebricks I'm working on, the user interface process, could almost be called a pattern in its own right. That's not really fair, though. It's more of a meta pattern. Are y'all familiar with MVC?
No.
Model View Controller. It's an old architecture, and it's one of the patterns that's discussed right there in the Gang of Four. The Bible of patterns. I call it Gang of Four now.
Yeah, that's what their names were.
I can't even remember what the book is anymore.
We have a reference to it.
Okay, good. Anyway, MVC's, I think, am I right? Yeah, I think MVC is in there. Real commonly used in the Smalltalk world, and there are a couple of very good Java implementations, a couple of very good .NET implementations.
Yeah. So start with what the user interface process application block is.
Okay. Well, let me give me just a 2 sentences worth of background. The PAG team, what they're doing is they're sort of extending Visual Studio today with an eye to what's coming out tomorrow.
Right.
So I want everybody to feel very comfortable that when they use these things, we're not leading you down a garden path, or you're not going down a blind alley architecturally. They are supported by PSS, the Premier Support Services. So we train people in how to diagnose problems with these things. They're very well documented. And if customers have problems with them, they can call Premier. So they're quasi-products. So don't be afraid to use them. We're not going to lead you down the garden path. I've also spent hours and hours and hours talking to the PMs in various groups, including upcoming framework releases and upcoming Windows, and said, is what we're doing consistent, if not semantically, at least philosophically, with what's coming? And they had to give sign-off or we couldn't have gone forward. So anyway, the UIP, it's called User Interface Process, and it's got 4 goals. First of all, would you guys agree with me that navigation and workflow, specifically workflow, do not belong in your UI layer code?
Yeah.
Those are business services.
Right.
But we all do it. We chain together either WinForms or we do response.redirects in our websites, and we have a great deal of linking between these pages, and it's fine if you've got a 10-page application. But I spent a couple of weeks a while back at a company with a 500-page web app that did that. And it was impossible to maintain. It was so brittle that you couldn't change anything. They were essentially rewriting it. And that's a real problem. So you've got to have workflow, got to have discipline, got to pull that out of the UI.
So give me an example of that.
Okay. Let's say that I need to go from I fill in my credit card information, right?
Okay.
There are a couple of possible outcomes from that page, right? I could go to the take off loser, your card is denied.
Right.
Or I can go to
That's what happens to me every day, so.
Right, and I mentioned that first because, that's my comfort zone.
Okay.
I know I'm doing good when my cards are full.
Right.
Yeah.
So, because that means you're rich, right?
Or stupid, one or the other.
And they go together real good.
That's right.
Yeah. Anyway, and the other possible outcome is ka-ching, thank you very much, I hope you get your stuff, maybe you won't.
Right.
So there's 2 possible outcomes. In a traditional web app, I would do some sort of logic in the UI and the code behind page, right?
Okay.
Which, it's a class all by itself, that code behind page, but doing a decision in there and then doing a response.redirect to either takeoff.aspx or kaching.aspx.
Right.
It's fine if you got a 3-page application.
Right.
The 500-page application is a problem, so you got to take that stuff out.
And it's a problem because you may want to add more decision trees or more outcomes or.
Yes.
Yeah.
You may want to chain different things.
Right.
You create brittleness when you do that because now you've got a dependency between all 3 of those things. All of them know about each other.
In other words, the decision to redirect to the thank you, goodbye page, if it's in the user interface rather than the business logic, then it's inflexible. That's basically what you're saying. Okay. That
is correct. Second big problem, huge, is state management.
Yeah.
So, we've got all of us probably 7 or 8 years of web programming under our belts by now, and we're all really used to HTTP being stateless, and we've all developed our own little bag of tricks for dealing with that, right?
Right.
So let's go back to the credit card example. I start at the credit card fill-in page, and I go to the take off loser. But they don't want to say to me, take off loser, right? They want to say, take off Mike, you loser. And the
Make
Mike
it personal.
That's right.
Yeah, you're making it personal.
That's personalization.
A personal insult is always better than an anonymous insult.
That's right. Yeah. That part, that mic, that state, right? How did I get that state from the credit card page where I put it in to the takeoffloser.aspx page?
Yeah.
I could have done it in the query string, form field, session, application, you name it, right?
Okay.
All of those things create the same sort of fragility and brittleness in your application that navigation does, that workflow does. Because if I put it in the form field, now what have I done? I've got a dependency. The original page has to know the name of that variable to put it there.
Right.
You got to retrieve it, and when it goes through the query string or the form field or whatever, it's loosely typed.
Very cool.
So I've got a lot of problems there too. They're very icky. Also, so here's the third point. We've talked about the first two goals of the UIP. Number one, workflow. Number two, state management. Number three, we want to make it so it's real easy to switch between Windows, web, compact framework, and even smart device like cell phone, WML type programming.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, this is piquing my interest.
Right now, there's not. The object models are close enough in WinForms and web forms that the programming environment certainly feels familiar when you switch back and forth, right?
Deceptively so, yeah.
Yes. But the things you use to glue an application together are very, very different. There's no session, there's no cache in WinForms, right?
Right.
So if you write code to those things directly without an abstraction layer, you have bound yourself very tightly to, one or the other.
And you're talking about code that would normally be in the user interface, and in code where there is some serious UI code going on, but it's not business logic, and it doesn't belong in the business layer, but yet, and it's going to have to be rewritten for every front end that we write. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, state management and workflow.
Right. The code that deals with the results of the data set when it comes back from database and shows it to the user and decides what we're going to do with it, etc.
That's right. Navigation decisions, things having to do with all that stuff, that's in the business layer.
Right.
The UI has plenty to do by itself. What it needs to be doing is painting pretty pictures on the screen.
Right.
That's its job.
Input and output.
Yeah, input and output. And input is a kind of a fuzzy area. Validation. There's some kinds of validation. There's semantic validation, right, where I say, does this look like a zip code? Does this look like a social security number, phone, whatever, right? And you can do that. You can do that in script right on the front end, or you could do it, server side.
Right.
But that's okay. I'm not saying you need to abstract that. But what about if you have to do a heuristic validation, like, okay, this employee just put a social security number in. Is it a social security number that exists in our employee database?
Yeah.
That's a heuristic, and that should not be in the UI.
Right. Well, what about the call to the function in the business object? That's obviously got to go in the UI.
What we're encouraging with the UIP, and if you look at it, and I probably shouldn't drill down into the details of the object model, but basically we ask you to use a facade pattern.
Okay.
We have an object in there called a controller, and you derive from our abstract base class, and we give you a bunch of utilities and nice stuff. It just kind of hides some of the plumbing that's happening. And you basically write a real thin layer between your UI and your business objects in that controller. And that controller also then takes over workflow and navigation.
Cool.
So that's a pretty thin shim. It's pretty easy to write.
And you're saying with that controller, it makes it easier to move from different user interfaces.
Well, that's right. One of our demonstration applications is a shopping cart, and we use the exact same code, about 95% of the same code, for the Windows and the web version. All we change is what the presentation layer looks like, and all it does is put pretty stuff on the page.
Well, that's very exciting. I want to download that and take a look at it as soon as possible now.
When do you think that'll be available? This is one of those questions you can't answer without shooting me, right?
Well, we have to, as in, I really like my job and would like to keep it. Therefore, I will ship this before the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th.
Okay.
UIP right now is in its second test bounce. It's looking very good. The code is pretty clean, and I think we've caught all the major, that's evil type bugs.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking end of May, mid-June.
Hey, I taught my first sockets class today in VB.net, Advanced Sockets, and the students in the class just loved it. We ended the day by writing a multi-threaded socket server that gets a request from a client to send a data set, compresses it down to about 75%. Well, compresses it by 75%, so down to about 25%. And then it sends it over the socket where it's accessed by multi-threaded client, sockets client, and decompressed into a data set and shown in a grid. So I have a data set transport in sockets that's not much more difficult to use than asynchronous web services. It's very cool. Anyway, check out our classes online at www.franklins.net. Hey, let's get back to this incredible talk with Michael Stuart from Microsoft Consulting Services. Don't go away.
What is the idea of a task in this UIP?
Oh, yeah, that's the third thing I didn't talk about. One of the things that's a very happy side effect of the fact that we do state management for you is that we've abstracted it to such a degree that you can dehydrate an ongoing user interaction and rehydrate it at a later date or on a different machine or even in a different user. Sort
of like a serialization?
That's very much. Oh, yes, and that's one of the implementations we use under the covers, sure. But the key use case scenario, therefore, for me, there's another one too, but for me was the, oh crap, my boss is coming use case.
Right.
And that one was I'm shopping for a pretty bra for my girlfriend, Victoria's Secret during work. Boss comes, you shut down the browser. You forgot where you are.
We're encouraging good work habits here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it would be real nice to be able to go home and resume that session.
Right.
And the more practical use for it, one of our customers is running a call center for credit cards, and they may get 7 pages into a 27-page interaction with a customer and be unable to continue because they're not a high enough employee, and they need to hand it up to their manager.
Sure.
So being able to, just package up that whole scene is.
And of course, that takes security into account, of course, or does it?
We punt on that.
Okay.
We
got to roll your own then.
Yeah, we floated a layer below that. If your application has existing security, then we'll work with that just fine. Obviously, a low-level user shouldn't be able to deserialize a high-level object.
Right.
And if you have good security in your code already, you'll work just fine.
You think you'll have a security bluebrick, or 1 or 2 or 3?
People are talking about it. I'm not sure. I can't make absolute promises.
Sure.
One of the ones that we're floating around right now is an encryption block because encryption is so unbelievably complicated.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to get it done right. So it's a real possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, the encryption one would be nice. We've played around with that some, Carl and I.
What these are free, are they?
They are free. You go download them, and we spend months and months and months writing these things, and we base them all on customer feedback. I have literally over 200 customer contacts for these 3, and so they're very very customer oriented. But you go to the MSDN, you download them, they're free. They come with tons of documentation. I'm working with the technical writers in England right now. There's 1 per brick, and they've been working for a month already, and they'll be working another month and a half.
Wow.
So these things are, they're serious.
I can see a class building around this, Mark, can't you?
Absolutely.
I can definitely see a 5-day class or maybe even smaller 1-day classes on these things, hands on.
Yeah, Michael, if you don't mind, kind of digging into the workflow one that you've talked about, I'm kind of curious. When you mentioned dehydration and rehydration, the first place I think I ever heard that applied to technology was with BizTalk. Because BizTalk is able to do this with long-running transactions. It dehydrates state into a SQL Server database, and then you can pick it back up later on the other end when you're ready to complete the transaction. So as far as managing, the locking of resources or anything like that, do you have that sort of thing addressed in the brick?
It's a great question. We were very, very careful with how big our scope was on that, because there's a whole spectrum of design patterns around UI. Everything from, there's a very simple one called Observer that does some really cool stuff, but it's pretty small. Then MVC, which is probably the most widely used Model View Controller. But Model View Controller doesn't have any pretensions towards state management. It just provides that abstraction that keeps views, the UI elements, from knowing about each other.
Where does that come from, MVC?
I think it comes from Smalltalk. I can't vouch for that for sure.
Mark, do you remember reading about that in the Gang of Four book?
MVC doesn't ring a bell, but the facade pattern and the observer pattern are both in the Gang of Four book.
I can't remember if MVC is in Gang of Four now. I've read a few patterns books and I'm getting them mixed up, but either way, it's real popular.
So it's a way to abstract the UI elements from knowing about each other? Is that what it's for?
That's its primary task, yeah. And to make it so that you don't have business logic in the UI.
Okay.
And one of the other things is, let me talk about some of the more complex ones, because you brought up BizTalk server as well. There's another pattern called front controller that gets a little bit more in depth than MVC. And then at the very far end of the spectrum, as you mentioned, there's BizTalk. And BizTalk truly does long-running transactions, and it's all about statefulness. We didn't want to get into that arena because there's this group in Redmond that's already done it pretty well, and that's the BizTalk guys.
Yeah, if you want a B2B solution, they want you to think BizTalk.
For sure. And it does some things that are just unbelievably hard to do. I mean,
absolutely.
I wouldn't even pretend to venture into that zone. Our serialization of the state is a very ephemeral thing. When let's go back to the crap, my boss is coming, got to close the browser use case. That state may stay in a SQL Server for a few days. In the case of a call center application, a few hours or whatever. And we're not doing anything like compensating resource managers. There's no way of undoing, sort of having a rewind stack. We considered that initially, but the complexities of it are just too much.
Well, let me ask you also, Michael, how are you syncing that state back up with that user? Are you doing it based on their login information when they come back in?
That's a great question. Most of the demonstration applications do exactly that. They correlate user logon, but what we use internally is a GUID called a task ID, and it's up to you, the application developer, to bring us the GUID when you come to our system.
Right. Well, see, I was imagining if somebody's on their work machine and they begin this flow, and they have to log off and they go home, how would we sync them back up if we didn't use login in that case, because they're on a different machine?
You could do it with a passport, or you could just have forms authentication.
Right. Yeah, forms is what I was kind of thinking.
Sure. Yeah, there's a million and one good ways of doing it.
Yeah, the use of the GUID is something that you saw back in classic ASP as well.
Right.
Generating a GUID, popping it in a hidden field in the browser, and then using that as a primary key lookup into a database.
Right. And
yeah, that works well.
It's a great trick, and we're certainly not afraid to recycle it.
Cool. What are some of the other bricks that you're working on? You mentioned 3 of them.
Yeah, for sure. So when we look at these bricks, we look at how many people we think are going to use them, and then we look at how much they're going to do for the people who do use them. And traditionally, they fall on sort of a kind of a curve that adheres pretty closely to the axes, where one that is extremely useful tends to be fairly complex, and relatively few people will use it.
Yeah.
And when I say relatively few, I mean compared to data access brick, which pretty much everyone should use if they're not. We think we'll get about 10 to 20% of that penetration with UIP. But the others I'm working on, one in particular is a no-brainer. It's just like the data access block. Everybody needs it, and I think it's just going to sell like, I think it's going to download like wildfire because it's free.
Yeah, the price is right. It's
the price is right, yeah.
That's right. It's called the Configuration Manager.
Okay.
And it's a doozy. I mean, if you've written a production application, you've needed this thing, because what are your solutions right now for storing configuration information in .NET?
Oh, web config file was one thing.
Web config, right?
Registry, even
registry,
though I would
XML file.
Kill myself before I saved anything in the registry.
SQL. And you could even venture out into AD if you have a kind and forgiving domain admin.
Yep. Right.
Or just write to a file.
Well, yeah, right.
Nothing wrong with that, as I've said before on the show.
So all of these things are very easy to do, right? But they're very, very time-consuming to do if you want to write a truly good abstraction that protects you from knowing at all where that information is kept, and it just works. You just go, hey, configuration, square bracket, my key, give me my string back.
Yeah.
I don't care where it came from, I just want it. And then you get some more complexities. What if you're in a web cluster, load balance cluster? Mm-hmm. How about if you want encryption? Another big thing. So, people keep database passwords in clear text in their web.config. And yeah, the ASP.NET engine protects web.config. It won't let you download it. But
it still doesn't give me warm fuzzies, though.
Exactly. I mean, if I crack a box, the first thing I've got is read access to the root directories, right?
Yep.
Right.
And that's a little bit scary. So we said, hey, we need a good configuration object. So we wrote one that gives you a whole bunch of flex points, but we ship it with SQL, XML, and registry storage providers. They are read and write, which is very exciting because you can't normally write config, right?
Sure.
For like personalization.
Well, yeah, you can, can't you?
Nope.
You can't write to a config file?
Nope.
Oh, you mean from an ASP.NET program?
Right.
Oh, okay.
So you
I knew about
create
that.
A dynamic. Dynamic properties they're able to store to them.
You could write it to a separate file, not your web.config.
Certainly.
Well, wait. There's an app settings section in the web.config. Can I not create my own entries and stick them in there?
You can't do it in the app settings area, but I believe you can outside of that, can't you? Michael?
Not really, no.
No.
I mean, you can go in there and manipulate it with XML raw.
Right.
Just open the file.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because something in app settings is easy to read, but it's tough to write something in there programmatically. You'd have to do it outside of the normal.
That's right.
And it's really because of the web, though, right? Because you have multiple things writing. Your session from a session, that's not the good place to write to a config file.
And you're right. I mean, I wouldn't encourage that particular use of it. But we give you the option of read-write. But the other thing we did was we spent a ton of time talking to the security guys in the PAG group and elsewhere about good ways of hiding configuration information and encrypting it properly.
Okay.
So we also give you pluggable encryption providers. We're going to ship with 2 of them. If you guys have heard of DPAPI, the data protection API.
Now, what's that? Never heard of that.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. I think it's Windows 2000 and up only. Data protection API, basically, what's the big problem with encryption?
Where do you put it? I mean, so
where do you put the darn key?
Right.
Right?
Where do you store
here
your
you've
key?
got the secret that only God and a few quantum engineers in the future can figure out.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I mean, modern encryption is so great, but you're so vulnerable because you got to keep the key somewhere.
Right.
So DPAPI takes care of that for you.
That's what we were talking to Dino about last week. Remember that, Mark?
Yeah, I don't remember him calling it Deep Happy.
He didn't know. No, he didn't know. But
it was the same problem.
It was the same thing. Right. I had known that there's a key. This is the key store, a secure key store that only the operating system knows where it is, right?
Everyone knows where it is, but nobody can get to it because the OS protects it based on your user password.
Same thing.
And only your profile can decrypt it.
Right.
If your profile isn't loaded, if you're not the guy logged on, forget about it.
Do you have a link or something where our listeners can get more about this?
Why don't I forward one to you guys? I've got a good one.
Great.
That will be excellent. We'll put that up on the site.
Absolutely.
Now, unfortunately, right now there's not a managed wrapper for DPAPI, so we wrote one.
All right.
And it whoops butt. It's very, very clean, very pretty code. I'm so pleased with the. I didn't actually write that one. I've concentrated mostly on the UIP and the app updater, which we'll talk about later.
Do you see these things becoming part of the base class library someday?
There's been some talk about that. The ADO.NET guys have talked to the data access block guys. I can't make any specific promises around that.
But just as a guess, I mean, would you that would be a logical course of action, don't you think?
Gosh, if I were a program manager in that group, I'd sure be tempted to do something like that with some of these things.
Some of them. Yeah, some of them you have to remain as code, but source code.
Right.
Because that's where they exist, but yeah. Like that configuration wrapper, the DPAPI wrapper would be a great one.
You know, the tough thing is how do you do things like that without either confusing the existing namespaces or diluting the message of the OO-ness of .NET, you know, it's
just add some more stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be another version of the framework.
Another DLL. That's all.
Or just, you know...
You don't overwrite anything.
System.data.buteasy wrappers.
System.security.dpappy.
Yeah, sure.
Or cryptography,
sure,
whatever.
For DPAPI.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if y'all have heard this, but in, I want to say Longhorn, but possibly the next version of Windows after that, absolutely every single API is going to have a managed wrapper.
Oh, sweet.
And it is gorgeous.
That's Cairo. That's what that is. Cairo is a, for the old folks out there, that was the mythical object-oriented operating system Microsoft talked about in the days of VB4 and C++, where everything was an object. Everything. The whole operating system was object-oriented. And the framework is about as close as we get to it now. But that's great. That means everything's available.
Yeah. Yeah. And the guys who are working on the UI part of that are very, very exciting. You know, one of the things I love so much about IE is how accessible it is. I mean, I think except for the kernel stuff, I mean, the OS, the GUI, I think you could write an entire GUI in IE because it's just so incredibly versatile. That document object model is one of the things that's behind the thinking in the next version of the UI.
Wow.
Cool. Have you ever seen an HTX file? Not an HTM, but HTX.
Right. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah. They're application front ends that are developed in IE.
Right.
Huh.
Right. Very powerful.
Wow.
There's some exciting stuff going on with that. So, do you guys want to go back to Configuration Manager?
Well, I'd like to move on to the app updater, if you don't mind. I think we got the idea of the config manager. That's very, very handy.
Okay. App updater. Did you guys play with? I know you're the featured site on got.net, and kudos on that, by the way, because I mean, you know, those guys. There's some very, very good .net sites and.
Oh yeah, it's been great.
So, but did you guys play with Terrarium?
Oh yeah, the where you build your animal.
Right.
Oh, that was awesome, man.
Yeah, Mark
was that
did.
just not
I
cool?
Didn't.
Yeah. Do y'all remember the updater component that it used?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the original app updater, And we said, gosh, that is so cool.
That's bits, right?
No, it's not.
Really?
Ours is.
Okay.
That's one of the key differences.
We talked about bits maybe a month or so ago in one of the ad spots when we were talking about articles on MSDN Magazine, which is a freaking great magazine, by the way.
Yeah.
A freaking great magazine. And they had an article on bits and how to use it with C#. So anyway.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember the app updater from Terrarium, and it was kind of a one-time thing. A program manager out of Redmond, I think he either completely wrote it or wrote most of it, Jamie Cool, and it was very good. So we said, man, we have got to turn this into an enterprise code sample for the PAG group, Patterns and Practices. Plus, Everett has come out, so we've got to update it so that it works with Everett. I think the original actually does, but we wanted to... Anyway, we went crazy. And also, there was all that bit stuff coming out at the same time. So we said, all right, what about if we took the app updater and made it so the downloader was an interface, iDownloader, and you could plug in any kind of downloader you wanted. And we'll give you the one that we think is really the best right now, which is bits. I mean, it's dead reliable.
That's, what is it, binary internet transfer system or something like that?
Background Intelligent Transfer Service.
That's it, background, yeah.
Yeah. And, it's whoops booty. It's very reliable. It works over HTTP.
And the idea is that if you lose your connection during the download and the next time you come online, it resumes.
No big deal. Right.
And it all happens in the background in a low priority thread.
That's right.
Doesn't interfere.
Doesn't chew up your bandwidth.
Yeah.
Very friendly. Doesn't spike. Yeah. So we took, and the other idea was this: we felt that there was a kind of a gap. For deployment, you've got a lot of great options. If you're in an enterprise, you're going to be using either SMS or Active Directory to push stuff onto your clients. If you are a big-time web shop with tons of clusters, you're going to be using Application Center to distribute your web applications to those front ends.
Right.
But those are all push solutions. There's not a whole lot of good pull solutions out there.
Yeah.
And certainly not ones that are, written in .NET for .NET. So we really wanted to have that.
That's very cool. I just did an experiment that worked out well to do sort of a chat program. I'm trying to do a firewall-friendly chat program, so I'm thinking use a web service. But web services, as you know, are sort of a pull model thing, and a chat program sort of has to push. Everybody, anytime a message comes out, it has to be broadcast to everybody. But I managed to do it with a web service. Check this out.
Cool.
I call a get message web service function on asynchronously, and by default, the timeout value for that is infinite. No, that's not true. You have to set it to infinite. You set the timeout to an infinite value. In other words, you call it in the background. It goes on a background thread and calls the web service. And it'll sit there and wait and wait and wait and wait until it gets a message. On the web server, in the service, I call a function on a background thread that looks at this object that has messages in memory that come in. And it gets the last ID of the message ID, the last message that was in the collection. And as soon as it gets another one, it returns it to that call. Follow me?
Yeah.
So it's basically everything's happening in the background. On the web service, the web service is sort of blocking in the background, waiting, in a sleeping thread, waiting for a new message to come. So he's holding open the connection, but that's all right. It's happening in the background. And as soon as somebody else sends a message to this shared messaging manager component that I wrote, boom, he gets it.
Did you consider using remoting with an HTTP protocol?
Yes, I did that next. So I did it as a web service first, and then I did it using remoting, and that works even better.
Yeah, remoting is kind of a dark subject for me, but it does offer some things that are so much cooler than DCOM.
Are you going to the launch? The the launch of Windows Server 2003 and Visual Studio 2003? Well, if you're not, and you're still interested in getting some info on that server product and what's new, check out MSDN Magazine. Of course, where else are you going to go? MSDN Mag Online as well has an article, a sneak peek at an article about the new things in Server 2003. Did you know that the server is completely locked down by default? Unlike NT in 2000, out of the box, everything is locked down. So you have to enable the services that you want to use before you can use them. It may take some getting used to as a developer, but it's in everybody's best interest. Also, the Internet Information Server is moved a lot closer to the kernel, so not only is it more efficient, but it's more secure. You get that operating system level protection that you just don't get in Windows 2000. So it's fast, it's performant, the framework is built right in, and it's secure. Check it out. All right, now let's get back to Michael Stuart talking about these application blocks, the bluebricks, here on .NET Rocks. And hey, we'll see you next week.
I tell you, I've got a very simple remoting demo. It's called a remoting toolkit up on my website, www.franklins.net/.net. It's a remoting toolkit. It consists of a README file, a web config file, and a VB module for your client. And it's based on the idea that you want to use HTTP channel with a binary formatter. And as long as you make your business objects that are derived from Marshall by Ref object, which, by the way, if you build them with components, they're going to be Marshall by Ref objects.
Right.
Using a component class, right?
Use a component class, exactly. And that's what you should be using for business objects anyway. So you do that, and you don't have to change line 1 of your code. And you go into the web config on the cert. You just make a dummy web application that has a reference to your business object, and you put like 3 or 4 lines in your config file, which I've got in my remoting kit. Tells you what to change. You change the class name and the assembly name. And then you go into the client, you load in this remoting module, and there's a line of code that registers the client version, the client thing, and you just change it and copy it and paste it for every object you want to remote. Add a reference to remoting, add a reference to your business object, boom, you're done. It's very cool.
That is cool.
Yep, so I have that sort of as a kit.
I'm actually going to download that because I just venturing off into the whole remoting world. I've been so infatuated with with the threading and all that fun stuff lately.
Yeah.
So.
The thing about remoting is that when you tend to read things on it, you get such a wide focus, of everything that it can do. It's very difficult to discern, okay, what part of it do I need, and then where do I go to find the snippet of code that I have to use? And I find that's the most challenging thing. It took me a long time to figure that little.
We're also big fans of Ingo Rammer's book, on remoting from a press. Short book, really about the first 4 chapters. Will get you up and going.
Yep, and then he's got ways to extend it in the rest of the book.
What's that author's name?
Ingo Rammer, Rammer.
The publisher is A-Press.
Apress.com.
They've been putting out some great stuff. And I'll tell you what, after the demise of Rocks, they're about the only game in town.
Well, it's Dan Appleman, It's his company. And Gary Cornell, their company. So they really know what technical authors want, and they know how to treat their writers right. That's one thing they do. They have much better royalties. They have royalties on foreign translations, which most publishers will give you diddly squat on that.
They even have royalties for tech editors. I've worked for them in the past as a technical reviewer for books. Very good company to work with.
So they end up they have a book on Lego Mindstorm programming. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did see that. That's kind of cool.
That's very cool. You don't see that at Rocks Press. Anyway.
Well, you don't see anything at Rocks Press anymore.
That's right.
That's really too bad, though. I mean,
it is.
I remember, back in the late 90s, I swore by them. I have, probably 20 of their books.
It's too. I really feel bad for the authors that really busted their guts to put out books, and now they're all screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really feel bad for him.
Yeah, if you were an author that had just finished a book for them, you're in a world of hurt, I guess.
Yeah.
Boy, no kidding. What do you do? Go shop it around?
Yeah, I guess.
Geez, that's harsh. You know, one of my buddies, you guys may actually know him, Stephen Fulcher.
Yeah.
Familiar name.
I've heard the name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he a regional director? He's not an RD, is he?
Yeah, he's an RD right now.
That's where I know him.
That's right. He just started that.
Yep.
I think he took over from Jay Skelly.
Okay.
Yeah, down here in Texas. So anyway, he's writing a book, and I'm pretty sure he's using A-Press. I'll have to ask him about that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question about the tattoo on your arm. Is that real? What is the deal with that?
Yeah. Oh, so here's the deal, right? I'm a pretty clean cut conservative guy, but I every year we have this big Microsoft get together for all the field folks, and about 10,000 of us descend on some city, and all the Europeans, all the South American subsidiaries, the Asian subsidiaries, everybody gathers in this one place, and we have 5 days of hardcore technical stuff and basically a big old company meeting.
They pass the Kool-Aid out?
Oh, they pass out buckets. Yep. And Steve Ballmer, who's the most dynamic person I have ever seen.
Yeah.
He's unbelievable. He's very. You see him talking to Neil Cavuto, and he's completely normal, and I just crack up because I know what he's like when he's in front of us.
Yeah.
Anyway, people get a little bit crazy. Nothing too bad. And we were in Miami back in 2000, and South Beach.
Right.
Good food.
Yep.
Pretty soon we're thinking tattoo, and that's when I got the Windows XP logo on my right shoulder.
One too many Coronas, my friend.
But that's the worst thing. I don't even drink. I was dead sober. That's how strong the Kool-Aid is.
Oh, man. So tell us what it is.
It's a Windows XP logo.
On your right arm?
Yep, about 1.5 inches.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's about... I like that it's countercultural, but at the same time conformist.
Oh man, we're gonna have to encourage our listeners to get .NET Rocks tattoos. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, man, that's a great idea.
I listen to the two fat guys that talk about code. Yeah,
that's right.
Just be sure and get it on a part of your body that doesn't stretch.
That's right. Or maybe it should. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me ask you if we can backtrack to the current stuff that's out there now in the bluebricks.
Sure.
I do want to come back to the database one, but there's another application block for exception handling.
Right.
And exception handling is something that I notice when I'm teaching that a lot of people don't really have a clear idea of what they should do with it. And it becomes a little more apparent once you start studying the way .NET internally handles exceptions. When you see an exception stack, for example, and you can drill down through the inner exceptions and the inner exceptions and the inner exceptions till you finally come to, the ultimate problem. Then from that, you can sort of figure out that every layer has to catch an error and throw its own error exception, passing an inner exception. So what do you guys...
If it's got something to add to the conversation.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, it should just pass it right on up.
Right.
Yeah, just throw it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So what is the main impetus behind creating that exception block?
Well, the exception block came after the data block, and it's slightly more complex. We try very hard to take into account, we've got 3 basic levels of usage. The good out-of-box experience where you just include it in your project and it just works. And then, your slightly more custom one, and then the one I like to call Kung Fu Developer, where they're going to be developing plugins for it and just, getting peeved because you didn't do the source right and hacking it up. And that's great. I encourage people to do that. The exception manager basically is a little bit in philosophy like the configuration manager. There's a lot of good ways of doing exception publishing. Like you can put it in the event log, you could put it in a file, you could put it on MSMQ, you could echo it up through Windows Messenger to, try to, or WMI to try to roll it up through the enterprise. So, for instance, if I were administering 16 web front-end boxes, I were like Dell.com or something. I'm just giving an example. I'm not pointing out specifics.
Sure.
Then it'd be real nice for me to know what kind of application exceptions are happening on all 16 of those boxes. And getting a redirection layer that works well to do that is not trivial, but not super hard either. But it's just a lot of code to write, and that's what they did in the exception manager. They give you a pluggable way of publishing exceptions.
And I heard that you could send an email, for example.
Right.
Log it to a. Can you log to a trace listener or do something else like that?
Sure.
Right, Paul Sheriff was talking about that, I think.
Yeah. That's cool. Now the data, let me get back to the data block because I saw this demoed. And one thing I didn't understand how and why you did things this way, or they did things this way. And maybe you can answer this, maybe you can't. But what the thing does is it wraps up calls to store procedures, right?
Or plain text SQL.
Okay. Or plain text SQL, but it keeps something in a cache so that a round trip we don't have to configure the parameters for the store procedure.
Right.
What's that all about?
That is very, very nice. Okay, so first of all, if you're familiar with the FM stocks data access layer, where it's real thin, if you remember the original one, it was like run SP return integer, run SP return string.
Yeah.
Thin, stateless,
right,
matter-of-fact, pragmatic front end on the data access layer, which I love. Data access block is similar to that philosophy, but the parameter caching is real cool.
What's the problem, first of all? Where do you run into the problem?
Well, the issue is this. Unless you strongly type your stored procedure parameters right up front, do you remember back in ADO days you could do parameters.refresh, and what that would do is execute a query against SQL Server, hey, give me the metadata for these parameters so I know what type they are.
Right, made another trip to the database to do that.
That's right.
Yes.
Then you execute your query, there's trip number 2.
Okay.
Right? So if you did that all the time, you just doubled the number of round trips.
And this is if you haven't strongly typed your parameters list. So the idea is we don't want to strongly type the parameters list to make the code flexible, right?
Flexible and, let's be honest, easier to write.
Easier to write. Because we don't ever have to worry about parameters. But we want to load them dynamically, but we don't want to make that round trip.
That's right.
Okay.
So what this lets you do is all of the methods, execute reader, execute data set, whatever, allow you to pass in an object array of parameters, totally untyped. Just boom, do it. Take care of it.
These are the values.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it goes and figures them out and then caches those that metadata for the parameters, and then the next time. So you only pay that cost once. Does a refresh, and then for the rest of that application's life, it's just using those cache data, the cache parameters.
Cache parameter information.
Right.
Now that's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
Slick.
Yeah.
I didn't get that from the guy I saw presenting it. I didn't understand why. Because in all my code, my parameters were strongly typed. Mm-hmm. I'm using wizards to create data adapters, or maybe I'm creating from a store procedure,
mm-hmm.
and that's basically doing all that parameter work for me. But they're hard coded, so there wasn't really, that wasn't explained. That why you wouldn't want to strongly type your parameters, because I guess that's what it all comes down to, is that you have less code to manage. You have less code to write if you're writing it yourself, and you have less code to manage if you're letting the wizard write it.
That's right.
You. And of course, it's flexible. If your database changes, you only have to change the call to the store procedure and the parameter that you pass. You don't have to set up all the code again.
That's right. And if your DBA is being friendly to you, he will just add the extra parameters at the end, so you don't have to change the existing.
Right. So existing code won't break.
Right.
Very cool. That's great.
No, that's a good block. And by the way, they are working on version 2 right now. I just reviewed the spec document and begged and pleaded for a feature I really want.
Is there anything you can tell us that's going to be new in version 2?
Well, one of the things that everybody wanted was strongly typed data sets.
Okay.
So I think that's going to make the cut.
So it's going to manage
what do you
the schema
Right.
for the data set then?
You mean if the schema of the database changes, it will change the code without having to regenerate things? Is that what you're talking about?
No, we're not going to do code gen. They're talking about the strongly typed data sets, the ones where you set up an XSD for it. You basically mirror you don't have to mirror, but most people, when they do them, they basically mirror the structure of the database.
Right.
And you get a set of strongly typed objects.
Sure.
Right. With the original data access block, it was pretty much impossible to work with those with the block unless you did a little bit of extra glue.
Okay, so the new block does the same thing the old one did. It just works with strongly typed data sets now.
And there's a few other things too, and honestly, I don't even remember now because it's been a couple of weeks since I reviewed the spec. I don't even remember the thing I was begging for. Oh, I remember what I was begging for: pluggable providers. Right now there are two implementations. There's the SQL one, and I think there's a black market Oracle one. But I wanted complete abstraction of that, so it would work with any back end.
Okay. And that's for the application blocks, because we know the data providers do a pretty good job of that.
Right, but I wanted to be able to use the same data access application block and just change something in the config, and boom, now all of a sudden it works with DB2.
That's nice.
Right, so they didn't handle the OLADB provider?
There's a black market version of that one floating around as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Meaning that someday we'll see that.
Yeah.
Probably.
Although it's a heck of a cost to us, so I'm not sure how soon that's going to come.
I just figured something out I think you guys might be interested in, and that is if you're using data sets and you're remoting, when I go to save my changes, first of all, I want to call get changes on my data set and only send that across.
Right.
So I want to be efficient. Now, what the heck do I return? This is the issue that I was up against. What do I return from that function, that save changes to my whatever table? Here's my data set. Now save my changes. Do an update, basically. What the heck do I return to my presentation? Do I return the entire data set again? Because what I want to capture is the row errors on the rows that have errors, and I want to capture column errors on any columns that have specific errors. Is very useful information, not only for your user interface if you're using a grid or something like that, but if you want to analyze that and deal with the issues and deal with the changes and deal with the errors that happen. Also, your business logic should be setting column errors when it has validation issues.
Right.
So how do you get those back in your original data set? And the thing that I came up with was two things on either side. On the remoting side, what I do is after, first of all, I set continue update on error to true. Okay.
Right.
On the data adapter. Then I do an update. And then what I'm going to do then on the data set that I pass in is call get changes on that and return a copy of the changes, which are only, at that point, the records and the tables that had errors. Because they haven't changed.
Right.
Because the data adapter is going to do an accept changes on everything that works. And everything else remains a change. So I'm going to get the changes and return that, to my calling code across the network, web service, remoting, whatever. And then on my client side, what I have is some code that will take my original data set and take this new data set that has the errors in it and merge them. But it doesn't use the merge because that would be either adding new records or not adding new records. It doesn't really replace the old records.
Right.
So I have to go into those to the data set that has the changes that was returned, look for all the errors, the row errors, the column errors, and then look them up in the original and set the errors. And that's what it does. And it works great. It works over remoting. It works over web services. And I can really keep the traffic down to the critical traffic.
You gotta love ADO.net. At first I was a couple of years ago, switching from ADO, I was like, oh man, this is all so new. And,
Yeah.
Different way of thinking.
But you start
Absolutely.
playing with it like you've done, and gosh, do some pretty slick stuff.
Very slick.
Yeah, what Carl's talking about is, a common problem. That's one of the toughest hurdles to get over with it when you've got concurrency problems in a disconnected environment.
Right.
Oh.
Or even concurrency problems, or even foreign key constraints, or any other errors that you want to set yourself, such as validation errors. We can't do this right now. Got to send it back.
Right.
By the way, one of the blocks that we're talking about doing is an offline processing block. It was actually one of the ones I was originally supposed to do, and I said, well, I can do 3 things at once, but not 4.
You heard it here, folks. This is a scoop.
But that is a real possibility for next year, or next fiscal year, which starts for us in July.
What would the gist of that be?
A little off what you were saying, but basically, what if I'm a mobile sales force and I have tablet PCs? Wouldn't it be nice if I had an application that really gave me no clue whether it was connected or not? It just worked, and then it would spool up whatever it needed to, and dump it whenever I was connected. And obviously that's impossible to do for some things, but what we thought would be neat would be to do an application block that simulated it as much as possible, and then when there had to be a back-end decision, for instance, validate this credit card, that it would say, okay, that you have to wait for, but you can continue with the rest of your stuff.
Wow.
It was kind of one of the...
So you mean like without having to rewrite any code, you'd like derive a new data adapter or something, or?
Well, you could probably, this is like a classic traveling salesman problem, right?
Sure.
You're not connected to the corporate database, but you want to take orders all day long, so you could, actually persist a data set as an XML file, something like that, and then have a layer that syncs it up whenever it detects it's online.
Well,
that was what we were talking about.
Well, doesn't the SQL guy do that now? The mobile SQL with synchronization.
Oh, the MSDE.
Yeah,
that was one of the
mobile toolkit
things we were talking about using as a
local data store.
Right. This is very. The thinking behind this block is very much in its infancy. We didn't even have a design; we just had ideas. And I'll see how that shapes up. One that's very close to shipping alongside mine is the caching block.
For ASP.NET?
For everything. One of the problems with WinForms is you don't have that wonderful ASP.NET cache, right?
Yep.
And another thing is, wouldn't it be nice to be able to store the cache anywhere you want it? So some guys out of Microsoft Israel did a really, really cool implementation. One of the providers is a memory map file. Y'all remember those?
Oh, you know what? Remind me to bring this up again. Memory map files. Go ahead.
Oh, it is a slick implementation, and it is faster than snot.
The first time I heard about memory map files was when Rocky Lotka brought it up. And talking about remoting. He said that there's a whole community of people who are working on extending remoting with different channels. And one of those channels is that people are working on is memory mapped files. Basically a way that we can directly map data in memory from one application and access it in another application, right?
Oh, that's kind of slick. Yeah. Why?
As a remoting channel, that would be extremely fast.
I've also heard that there's a rumor of a named pipe remoting channel.
That's right. I've seen that as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not as fast as memory map files. Memory map files probably the fastest. I don't know.
Probably the fastest you could get. Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
Besides actually being in the same process, yeah. So anyway, the caching block is coming out pretty soon. It'll probably ship alongside mine. Under the guys.
So what do we need a cache for if our module level variables or class level variables actually stick around?
What if you wanted to share it among multiple?
Just for the recycling aspect of it?
What if you wanted to share it among multiple applications?
Right.
Okay, well I can see that.
You've got that issue. You've also got the issue of,
That's the issue. That's the issue. When you have multiple applications that want to use a cache, maybe in the same process but in different application domains, I'm thinking.
What if you want to be able to tell your cache, hey, listen, I've got to shut down the application, but you go ahead and keep what you've got so far.
Now I'm getting it. It's got to be outside the process.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be a nice extension to COM Plus,
right.
In the future.
Yeah.
To be able to have some sort of application cache. I guess you might consider the shared property manager something like that now, but
no.
But yeah, the shared property manager is considered evil in many regards. But it'd be nice to have a cache object similar to what we have
a nice
in
reaction
IIS
there, Mike.
ASP.NET and COM Plus.
I say no for SPM because it's great for smaller apps, but I wouldn't want to run my ticketing and reservation system with it. Not because they did a bad job, but simply that's not what it's designed for.
Right, it's not incredibly scalable, as what I've heard. I really don't use it, but I read Pattison's book and his discussion about what do he call it, the spam?
The spam.
Yeah. Do you have any, Michael? Do you have any favorite tools that you've downloaded or even bought? Maybe third-party applications, third-party tools that you like?
Oh, yes, I do. I have just recently fallen in love with a new tool called the C# Refactory. It's by a company called Extreme Simplicity, and the CTO. His name escapes me now. Kotha or something. Anyway, I can't remember his name, but the company is Extreme Simplicity. Product C# Refactory.
Okay.
Very, very slick little piece. It lets you do things like, the simplest thing, right-click on a method name and say change it, and it changes it throughout your entire solution.
Huh.
Which is somewhat awkward to do with just plain old find and replace because you can make mistakes.
True.
It'll do things like...
Is it only for C#?
What's that?
Is it only for C#?
I don't know that. I think it may be.
Huh.
You can right-click an entire class and say extract the interface. You can click on a block of code and say extract a method, and it gets all the parameters and stuff right for you.
Wow.
So when you're factoring code, it's just a fantastic tool.
Oh, that sounds great. Sounds great. Well, you got any last-minute wisdom to impart on us? Or maybe, I don't know, a joke? No. Impart on us poor starving souls?
You guys aren't as starving as I am. I'm getting up at 4 to code these days. And I just, be looking for these 3 new bricks. They're coming out in the next month and a half.
And trust the bricks.
Trust the bricks.
That's a good message.
And get out there and read some design pattern books, and because that's the way all of Microsoft is going, and I think you're going to see it reflected in the code more and more.
You mentioned feedback. Is there an email address or some place that people can send their suggestions for bluebricks?
Oh yeah, there sure is. And darned if I can't remember the alias right offhand.
Well, that's okay. We'll set it up online.
Michael, I got one last question for you. Where did the name Bluebricks come from?
Oh, Legos. I think the guys, sort of were brainstorming one day. The program manager / architect that I'm working for, Edward Jazierski, he's sort of the point man for me, certainly, and one of the real idea guys in PAG. And I think it was his baby. He's Argentinian. So I don't think that the inevitable slang occurred to him at the time. But he based it on Legos. He just said, hey, look, building applications with .NET should be like snapping together Legos, and we need to provide Legos for people.
Nice.
So that was the idea behind bluebricks.
Oh, that's great.
Very cool.
Well, Michael Stuart, thank you very much. It's been an incredible just over an hour, about an hour and 20 minutes. And thank you so much. Can we ask you to come back again in
absolutely
6 months or
so? Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, come back in 6 months and tell us what the new bluebricks are gonna be.
Oh, you got it. You got it.
All
Maybe
right.
I'll get my dream and get to work on a threading blue brick.
Oh, I love it. I got to talk to you about a sockets blue brick. I got some great code.
Oh, that'd be great too. Sure.
Yeah. We'll talk.
All right, guys.
All right, thanks for calling.
Thank you guys very much.
We'll talk
Take
to you
care,
later.
Mike.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Drive on, life is hard, pay my taxes.